Instead of celebrating the arrival of a new year in 2006, close friends and relatives of the Harvey family found themselves preparing for a mass funeral. But even then, the horrors were far from over. Today, we unravel one of the most chilling strings of crimes to ever darken the state of Virginia. A story that reminds us, sometimes the enemies we fear do not force their way in. They walk through the very doors we leave open for our friends. The perpetrators left behind a trail of devastation, robbery, brutal assaults, and merciless murder. Before we get into this chilling story, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and join us as we uncover more true crime cases you won't believe are real. This tragedy all began with the Harvey family, well known and deeply loved in Richmond. Within the span of a single week, 2 different families would be slaughtered in their own homes, leaving authorities and neighbors in shock at a level of violence the city had never seen. 8 lives would be lost. Among them was 39-year-old Kathy Elizabeth, a woman raised in Kings Grant, once so admired that she was crowned prom queen. She was creative, artistic, and gentle, qualities that matched her future husband, Brian Harvey, a man raised on rock and roll who dreamed of musical success. With his friend, Brian formed the band House of Freaks, a group that allowed him to share his love of guitar and performance. The pair seemed destined to be together. They married in 1990 and began their life in a 2-story brick home in the Woodland Heights neighborhood of Richmond, a place they believed was safe, ideal for raising children. In 1996, their first daughter Stella was born, followed by Ruby in 2001. From that moment, the Harvey household revolved entirely around their 2 little girls. Brian once said in an interview that fatherhood gave him purpose. Kathy, meanwhile, fulfilled her lifelong dream of opening a toy store. To neighbors and friends, the Harveys were the very picture of love, creativity, and family. Their home reflected this warmth. Rarely locked, it was always open to friends and neighbors. If someone felt lonely, needed advice, or simply wanted company, the Harvey family welcomed them with open arms. On January 1, 2006, they hosted a New Year's gathering with friends, family, and a pot of their famous chili. That afternoon, Brian's longtime bandmate Johnny Hott arrived with his daughter around 1:30 p.m. But instead of music and laughter, he was met with horror. Thick black smoke was pouring from the Harvey home. None of the 4 family members could be seen. Fearing they were trapped inside, Johnny dialed 911, begging for help. Firefighters rushed to the scene, expecting a routine house fire caused by an electrical fault or safety hazard. What they discovered instead was a nightmare beyond comprehension. Inside the basement, first responders found the bodies of the entire Harvey family: Brian, Kathy, 9-year-old Stella, and 4-year-old Ruby. Bound with electrical cords and tape, the children were discovered near 2 hammers and a knife, weapons that had likely been used in the attack. The scene told a story of unimaginable violence. Kathy's easel was overturned, stained in red wine, with empty bottles scattered across the floor. In shock, neighbors, emergency crews, and friends stood outside the home in disbelief. How could such a fate befall a family so deeply cherished in their community? The brutality was staggering. All 4 had suffered multiple wounds before their throats were cut. Brian and Kathy died from blunt force trauma. Stella from smoke inhalation and head injuries. Ruby from knife wounds that pierced her lungs. Even the pathologist, a man seasoned by years of examining violent deaths, admitted he had never seen such cruelty. What disturbed detectives even more was the lack of forced entry. The doors and windows were intact, suggesting the Harveys either knew their killers or the open-door nature of their home had been exploited. To make matters worse, much of the evidence was destroyed by fire and water, leaving investigators with little to work with. Neighbors and relatives were adamant. Brian and Kathy had no enemies, no business disputes, no troubled relationships. The Harveys were a family everyone loved. Yet something odd had occurred that morning, and it would haunt one witness forever. Around 10:30 a.m., a family friend, Kirsten Perkinson, had walked Stella home from a sleepover. Kirsten knocked at the door, expecting Kathy's usual warmth. Instead, Kathy appeared pale, nervous, almost as if something was terribly wrong. At one point, she even mimed a gun to her head, a strange gesture Kirsten dismissed as a sign of a migraine. Stella rushed inside, but Kathy quickly pulled her back out, insisting she wasn't feeling well. Though odd, Kirsten thought little of it at the time. Hours later, she wondered if she had missed a desperate cry for help. From this account, police believed the killers were already inside the Harvey home before Stella returned. Suspicion initially fell on Johnny Hott, the man who discovered the fire, partly because of his close connection to Brian. Detectives even analyzed House of Freaks' music, searching for sinister meaning in the lyrics Johnny had written. Songs about wives, jealousy, and basements. But interrogating Johnny revealed he had nothing to do with the crime. Investigators had chased a dead end. The community mourned deeply. Outside the Harvey home in Kathy's beloved toy store, flowers, stuffed animals, and photographs created makeshift memorials. But fear gripped Richmond. If such a gentle family could be targeted, who would be next? That fear was confirmed just days later. On January 6, while police still scrambled for leads, a Chesterfield woman named Lillian Pauley made a chilling call. She believed she knew who killed the Harveys. Her daughter Latoya had been friends with a young woman named Ashley Baskerville. On New Year's Day, Ashley had shown up at their house with two men, Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge, who asked to stay for a while. At first, nothing seemed unusual. But as news of the Harvey murders flooded local television, Latoya grew uneasy. The men were acting strangely, and they had brought with them a laptop that clearly didn't belong to them. Whispers of doubt grew into terror. Could Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge, two strangers now living under her mother's roof, be the monsters responsible for the Richmond murders? On January 6, Lillian Pauley finally felt confident enough to alert the police about her suspicions. But before officers could even act on her report, her daughter Latoya made a second urgent call, this time giving investigators an address that would soon expose the killer's full brutality. The location was the Baskerville Tucker residence, just 15 miles from the Harvey home. Latoya explained she feared for her best friend, 21-year-old Ashley Baskerville, who had left earlier with Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge. Now she wasn't answering calls. In fact, Latoya admitted she had a chilling feeling that Ashley might already be dead. When police arrived at the modest family home, their fears were confirmed. Inside, they discovered yet another horrifying scene. Ashley, her mother Mary, and her stepfather Purcell Tucker had all been bound, their throats slit. Purcell had been stabbed 5 times in the neck, Mary twice. Their faces were wrapped in cellophane and secured with tape. The house had been ransacked, electronics, valuables, even Purcell's Chevrolet Blazer were missing. The Tucker family had been pillars of their community. Mary was known for her laughter and warmth, while Purcell, quiet and gentle, was dedicated to his family and his church. He had raised Ashley as his own daughter, despite her occasional brushes with trouble. Now they were gone. What chilled detectives most was the detail that tied the murders together. Around Ashley's neck hung a ring identical to one of the Harvey wedding bands, stolen from their bodies after death. It soon became clear Ashley had not only fallen victim to Gray and Dandridge, but had played a role in her family's destruction. Latoya told investigators that days earlier, she had overheard Ashley conspiring with the two men. Ashley complained about her stepfather's strict rules and claimed he had hidden money in the house. She urged Gray and Dandridge to rob him, even proposing a fake kidnapping scheme. Latoya had been horrified, walking out before the plan unfolded. Hours later, Ashley's betrayal ended in her own brutal murder. With this new information, police were certain Gray and Dandridge were their killers. Their suspicions were reinforced when an elderly couple came forward. Just 3 days earlier, on January 3, the men, accompanied by Ashley, had broken into the home of 71-year-old Roy Mason. Armed, they terrorized the couple, stealing jewelry, cash, and electronics. Roy begged for his life, explaining that his disabled wife depended on him daily. Miraculously, the men spared them, leaving the couple shaken but alive. Now, with 3 crimes in a single week, the manhunt intensified. The stolen Chevrolet Blazer was traced to Philadelphia, parked near the home of Dandridge's father. On January 7, 2006, a SWAT team surrounded the house. Dandridge attempted to flee through the back door but quickly surrendered. Ricky Gray, however, refused to give up easily. Hiding behind a water heater in the basement, his face twisted with rage, Gray looked ready to die rather than be caught. After a tense standoff, officers subdued him. Both men were finally in custody. Interrogations began almost immediately. Within an hour, Dandridge admitted involvement in the Baskerville Tucker murders, but he insisted Ricky Gray was the mastermind. Meanwhile, Gray himself sat alone in his cell, scrawling a 3-page confession letter. In it, he detailed the attacks, showing no remorse, no clear motive, only an insatiable desire for control over defenseless people. Further investigation revealed how these men had spiraled into such darkness. Ricky Gray, diagnosed early with ADHD, grew up in a home marked by abuse, beatings from his father, molestation from his brother, and years of neglect. Instead of escaping his trauma, he plunged deeper into chaos, drinking, crime, and violence. His nephew, Ray Dandridge, lacked the intellect or stability to resist Gray's influence. Together, they were inseparable partners in crime since their teenage years. In 1995, both were sentenced to a decade in prison for robberies. Released only months before the Richmond killings, they quickly returned to violence. On January 1, 2006, they set out in search of money, randomly prowling the city for opportunity. That's when they saw the Harvey home. Its front door, characteristically unlocked, made it an easy target. Gray and Dandridge entered quietly, ordering the family into the basement. Bound and terrified, Brian, Kathy, Ruby, and little Stella were promised safety if they obeyed. While Dandridge searched the house, Gray stood guard. For hours, the Harveys prayed for release. Then a knock at the door. Family friend Kirsten Perkinson had arrived with Stella, returning her from a sleepover. Kathy was forced upstairs at knife point to collect her daughter. Terrified but composed, she tried to mask her distress. When Kirsten's own daughter attempted to follow Stella into the basement, Kathy's quick thinking, pulling the child back, saved her life. But the situation collapsed instantly. Paranoid and fearing discovery, Ricky Gray snapped. In a frenzy, he began stabbing. One by one, he slaughtered the Harveys. Even after setting the scene ablaze, he returned to finish off Stella and Ruby, his rage uncontrollable. Outside, Ashley Baskerville waited in a nearby car, showing no pity for what had just taken place. By January 8, investigators confirmed what had already begun to surface. Ashley Baskerville was not only a victim of this bloody spree, she had been complicit in it. The confessions of Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge made it clear. Ashley's betrayal of her own family had set the stage for their deaths. But detectives wondered, were the Harveys and the Tuckers the only tragedies in Gray and Dandridge's lives? The answer was chilling. It turned out Ricky Gray had married soon after his release from prison. His wife, 35-year-old Treva Gray, had vanished just weeks before New Year's. For months, her death went virtually unnoticed. Police dismissed her disappearance, citing her reputation and lifestyle, and assumed she had left on her own. But Treva's parents insisted otherwise. They knew the violent arguments between their daughter and her husband, and they feared the worst. Their suspicions were tragically confirmed when Ricky confessed in 2006. Treva had been beaten to death, her body dumped in a shallow grave in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. Treva had once believed Ricky had changed, even letting him move into her parents' home despite their protests. But the correctional system had only suppressed his violence temporarily. When his nephew Ray Dandridge was released from prison on October 26, 2005, he too moved in. What followed was months of tension, escalating abuse, and finally Treva's confession to her parents that she had made a terrible mistake marrying Ricky. Days later, she was gone forever. Only after Ricky's admission did the truth come out. Dandridge had held her down while Gray savagely beat her with a metal pipe. And Treva wasn't their only victim. On December 31, 2005, just hours before their New Year's rampage, Ricky Gray and his nephew attacked 26-year-old Ryan Carey outside his parents' home in Warrenton. Stabbed multiple times in the chest, Ryan slipped into a coma that lasted 2 weeks. Though he survived, he was left permanently disabled, losing the use of his right arm. All for what? A wallet and car keys. That case, too, had gone unsolved until Ricky's confession months later. As if this wasn't enough, the pair met Ashley in a bar on New Year's Eve. Together, they conspired to stage her kidnapping in hopes of extorting money from her stepfather. But the plan quickly collapsed. With Ashley's keys, they forced their way into the Tucker home, gagged Mary, Purcell, and Ashley, and bound them tightly. At some point, Prophet gave way to pure bloodlust. Right before Ashley's eyes, Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge executed her parents. Then, in an act of cold indifference, Ricky turned on Ashley herself. According to his own words, he had grown tired of her and decided to dispose of her as if her life meant nothing. This was the pattern. For Ricky Gray and Ray Dandridge, murder was not just a means to an end, it had become the end itself. In just one bloody week, they killed 7 people, robbed 2 others, and left one young man permanently scarred. When police first began investigating the Harvey murders, they never could have imagined it would unravel into a trail of violence stretching across 2 states. The killer's capture brought relief to Richmond, but it also revealed the sheer depths of their cruelty. Justice soon followed. Ray Dandridge pleaded guilty, avoiding trial, and received a life sentence without parole. Ricky Gray, however, withdrew his confession, forcing the case before a jury. The murder of 9-year-old Stella and 4-year-old Ruby Harvey proved decisive. The jury sentenced him to death on October 23, 2006. For years, Gray's execution was delayed as appeals made their way to the highest courts. His defense argued that his abusive childhood and lifelong trauma should spare him from the death penalty. But the Supreme Court disagreed, ruling that the punishment fit the enormity of his crimes. On January 18, 2017, at the age of 39, Ricky Gray was executed by lethal injection. He became one of the last inmates put to death in Virginia before the state abolished capital punishment in 2021. In the wake of the tragedy, the city of Richmond honored the victims. In 2006, the Harvey family, Brian, Catherine, Stella, and Ruby, was posthumously named Family of the Year, a solemn recognition of lives taken far too soon. And that is where we leave this haunting case. Was justice truly served? Or do the scars left behind tell a story that no verdict could ever heal? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this case as compelling as it is tragic, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another true crime story. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.